Right, right. What does mugremes mean? What is hagrama? What's the psul of hagrama? Cutting it in the wrong place. So the word hagrama actually means a slanted cut. A cut. In other words, rather than going straight through like this, it's a slanted cut. That's what hagrama means, the word hagrama. And it obviously, what Simon is saying is correct, that the reason there's a problem with a slanted cut is not because it has to be a horizontal cut versus an angular cut, but because the angular cut is going to take us out of the makom hashchita, right? So here we have Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonos coming along and saying that mugremes is keshera. Now, when he says mugremes, who is he referring to? When he says mugremes, who is he referring to? So there are actually, remember, there were two opinions that preceded Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonos. One opinion was the opinion of Rabbi Yossi b'Rabbi Yehuda. One opinion was the opinion of the Rabbanan. According to Rabbi Yossi b'Rabbi Chanina, it seems that there is a greater latitude than what the Rabbanan say. When Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonus came along and was machshir, this is the language that the Gemara uses. He gave testimony that he was machshir hagrama. Whose hagrama was he machshir? Was he machshir what the Rabbanan would consider hagrama, which means that Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonos agrees with Rabbi Yossi b'Rabbi Yehuda? Or was he machshir what Rabbi Yossi b'Rabbi Yehuda considers hagrama, which means that he has his own separate and unique opinion? Is that clear? As clear as mud. Yeah, I can tell from your faces it's as clear as mud. Okay, so let's understand. Mishnah gives us basically two opinions: the opinion of the Rabbanan that say it all has to be within the Tabaz Hagdola, the opinion of Rabbi Yossi b'Rabbi Yehuda, who seems to say as long as rov is in the Tabaz Gedola, part of it can slant upwards from the Tabaz Gedola. Okay? Those are clearly two different opinions, right? Mm-hmm. Right? Yes? No? Maybe? Yes. Clearly two different opinions. Okay. Now comes Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonos, and he doesn't say, I disagree with the Rabbanan and Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda. He doesn't say, I disagree with the Rabbanan. He doesn't say, I disagree with Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda. What does he say? He says, Hagrama, what we've defined, or what's been defined as Hagrama is, I think it's okay. It's an ambiguous statement. Right? When the Gemara says, He'id Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonos, that Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonos came along and said, Hagrama that we're talking about, I consider it kshera, I don't consider it Hagrama. What Hagrama is he talking about? There are two possible answers. Because remember, according to the rabbis, the Rabbanan, what's Hagrama? What's Hagrama? Anything above the Tabas Gedola. Anything above the Tabas Gedola is Hagrama. According to Rabbi Yossi b'Rabbi Yehuda, what is Hagrama?
As long as there's rov.
As long as rov is in the Tabas Gedola, I don't care where else it goes. Right? So the Rabbanan have a definition of Hagrama, meaning anything out of the Tabas Gedola is Hagrama. Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Chanina has a definition of Hagrama, meaning as long as rov is in the Tabas Gedola, anything outside of the Tabas Gedola I don't care about. When the Gemara says that Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonus comes along and is machshir Hagrama,
we don't know what they're saying.
We don't know whose Hagrama he's machshir. Is he machshir the Hagrama of the Rabbanan? In which case, he's the same as...
Well, we don't know that either.
So let's play that. If he's machshir the Hagrama of the Rabbanan, what the Rabbanan consider Hagrama, then he could be agreeing with Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda.
Yes, although you wouldn't expect them to give his opinion in that instance.
Or he could just be giving his opinion as a support.
I guess.
Okay, in other words, I just want to bring out the possibility. In other words, Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonus his position is not clearly stated in the Gemara. The Gemara says simply that he was machshir the hagrama. It doesn't say whose hagrama he was machshir. Was he machshir the hagrama of the rabbis, which might possibly make him in the same camp as Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda, because what Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda was doing was saying what the rabbis consider hagrama, I don't consider hagrama. Or when he says he was machshir hagrama, meaning he was machshir even the hagrama of Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda, in which case his opinion is an independent opinion and even more lenient than Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda. Does that help at all?
Mm-hmm. So that's
So do we
why
know?
that's why we bring these extra Tanaim or Amoraim, I forget which already.
No. That what I just gave you is going to help us understand the next section of the Gemara, not the Amoraim. In other words, the Gemara says, "What do you have to bring all these Amoraim for?" We have these Tanaim who seem to say specifically that your opinion, Rav Nachman, seems to be the same position as Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonus. And the Gemara says, and now we're back on 19a, what 19, oh, yeah, so gosh, I'm so lost. 19a1. We're here, the Gemara says, makes the following statement. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, mugremes de Rabbanan ksheira le Rabbi Yossi be Rabbi Yehuda. Right, Rabbi Yossi be Rabbi Yehuda is machshir, what the rabbis call hagrama. Ude Rabbi Yossi be Rabbi Yehuda, and what Rabbi Yossi be Rabbi Yehuda considers hagrama, ksheira le Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonus. That's how we initially understood the position of Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonus. That there were three separate and increasingly lenient opinions. The rabbis were the most stringent. They said within the Tabas Gedola only. Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda was a little bit more lenient, and he said as long as Rov was in the Tabas Gedola, whatever comes out afterwards is fine. And Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonus was the least stringent, right? And he said even above the Tabas Gedola is fine, as long as it's beneath the Shipua Hakova, okay? And that's how we understood this. So when Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi brings these opinions, the Gemara asks the question, the Gemara says, Pshita. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, what are you telling me this for? We just learned that the Rabbanan are the most stringent. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda is less stringent, and Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonus is the most lenient. So what are you telling me that there's this order for? I know there's this order already. So the Gemara is going to come along, and the Gemara is going to say that Mahu Detema, you might have thought, since Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonus' statement was so ambiguous, you might have thought Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonus adurabanan kai, that when when the Gemara said, hey, Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonus, when the Gemara said Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonus was machshir hagrama, whose hagrama was he talking about? He was talking about the rabbi's hagrama, and therefore he is theoretically in the same boat as Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda. So Kamash Malan, so Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi was coming along to teach me that's not true. Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi was coming along to teach me that that Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonus is a third and separate and the most lenient opinion. Okay, period. Right, end of discussion. Right, end of discussion. We now know that there's the opinion of Rabbi of the Rabbanan. We now know there's the opinion of Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, and we now know that there's the opinion of Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonos. Those are three different opinions, going from most stringent to least stringent. Who is the halacha like?
What do we do?
Yeah. Well, no, who's the halacha like?
Halacha is closest to Rabbanan.
The halacha is like Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonos. That's the halacha. The Gemara says v'hilchasa. The Gemara says that the halacha is like Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonos, right? That is the halacha v'hilchasa Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonos. Dekai Rav Nachman Kavase, as Rav Nachman was holding by him. So that is the halacha. We saw last week that what did the Simla Chadasha say? The Simla Chadasha said we don't rely on this. That even though the halacha is like Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonos, anything which is that high up on the trachea, we stay away from. Now, we were discussing last week that if it's a question of hefseid meruba, let's say you're going to lose a lot of money, or
that applies to everything.
or right, or shas harchak. I've seen how you guys go through chickens. It doesn't apply to everything, right? Or shas harchak, right? There's not enough time to shecht another animal before, let's say, Shabbos or Yom Tov or something like that. So under those circumstances, maybe we would rely on what the halacha seems to be, which is the position of Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonus, that allows and that defines as makom shchita anything below the shipua hakova. But I think lema'aseh, we try to avoid getting involved in that question. But those are the three opinions, and that is the halacha as codified by the Shulchan Aruch. Okay. The Gemara is now going to go back and turn its attention to the Mishnah again. Okay, so before we do that, I want to go back and look at the Mishnah. 18, Yudches Amud Aleph, 18a2. Okay, we're going to look at the last part of the Mishnah. What does the Mishnah say? The second Mishnah, the one at the bottom of the page. The Mishnah says, Hashochet mitoch hataba'as v'shir ba male hachut al penei kula shchitaso kshera. This is the opinion of the Rabbanan. Somebody tell me what this means. The opinion of the Rabbanan. But we've said it already like half a dozen times. What does it mean?
Seems to be you're shefting in the Tabata Gedola, and there's a little string. You're right at the top of the Tabata Gedola, but there's a little string of Tabata Gedola still left on top of where you cut, and therefore you've been entirely within the Tabata.
Okay, so this is the position of the Rabbanan. The position of the Rabbanan seems to be that as long as there is a border, a little border of Taba'as Gedola, then your shchita is kshera. Meaning as long as you haven't gone out of the Tabas Gedola, now we're talking obviously upwards, because downwards is not a problem. As long as you haven't gone upwards from the Tabas Gedola, the shchita is considered valid according to the Rabbanan.
Well, it wouldn't matter. This has got to be for the hammers and stuff, because on a chicken it would be almost impossible to tell. I mean, you need a microscope.
My sense is that we're talking about here where you could examine it and see that is the case, right? That is the case. I don't even know, the chickens have a Tabas Gedola?
Yes.
Okay. So there's got to be some way to measure it. I mean, it might be just too difficult practically, but there's got to be some way to measure it.
Once you start to clean it and start to look for it, so many things can happen. It would be almost impossible.
Well, when you pop out the kana, what are you looking for? When you pop it out, are you looking to see that it was completely cut?
Oh, row.
Yes. So you're looking for row, and you're looking to see that it pops out and pops back in.
And it retracts.
Okay. Could you tell if it was higher than the Tabas Gedola?
It probably would not pop back in very well.
It would not pop in very well if it was higher than the Tabas
But if
Gedola.
it was that small of a difference, I don't think it would either.
You're gonna sign kind of from the Vesha. But you first of all, you would see that it's very short compared to what you used to see. You would
And then the
have to see
Vesha would mushroom.
The
if you were to-
you have to assume if you cut the Vesha at the same point, the Vesha would also mushroom over.
It would what? It would.
It wouldn't
And
Would not
mushroom,
mushroom
it shows
over.
like
The skin folds back.
And then you always go by rove, right? Rove of your shlitas are in the right place, so.
You don't go by rove of your shchitas in the right place. Okay.
I think Hadashi does say that though.
Okay. So that's what that seems to be the position of the Mishnah. Zach, we've definitely missed you. Right? That seems to be the position of the Mishnah, that the rabbis seem to say everything needs to be within the Tabas Gedola. Okay? Along comes Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda in the Mishnah. Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Malei Chut al Pnei Ruba. He disagrees. Not Malei Chut al Pnei Kula, but Malei Chut al Pnei Rova. What does that mean? It means that as long as the majority of the cut was in the Tabaz Gedola, then even if it angled upwards after the majority of the cut, we don't care. That's Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. That seems to be a relatively simple disagreement, correct? Because if I asked you to explain it, you would say it's relatively simple, right? The rabbis say everything has to be in the Tabaz Gedola, and Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda says only Rove has to be in the Tabaz Gedola. What we're going to see now in the Gemara is that our Mishnah is not so simple. That what appears to be simple on the surface is really not so simple. So let's get back to the Gemara. Okay, you test Amid Aleph. The Gemara says as follows. Okay. Amar Rav Huna, Amar Rav Asi. Rav Huna says in the name of Rav Asi, we're pretty much 3 lines up from the bottom of the gray bar on 19A1. Amar Rav Huna, Amar Rav Asi, Machlokes, the Machlokes of our Mishnah, the Machlokes between the Rabbanan and Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, seems to be, according to the opinion of Rav Huna in the name of Rav Asi, seems to be b'sheshachat shnei shalish v'higrim shalish. How is he defining this? He's saying you shechted 2/3, and you were magrim, and you went out of the area for 1/3. That seems to be the machlokes between the Rabbanan and Rabbi Yossi. Would you agree with that analysis?
Well, if it's a rove of 1,
Question is,
One is
2/3
rove and
rove.
one is 2/3. You're talking-
Is 2/3 rove?
No.
Rove is 51%.
That's what I'm saying. That's the question.
Yeah.
Rove is, yeah.
Okay,
it
yeah,
is
okay.
wrong.
So wait a second. So I see where you're going. You're getting caught up in the wrong thing. We're assuming, for purposes of illustration, that 2/3 is rove. Even though technically rove is 51%, in reality, how are you going to measure 51% of a cut? Of the 51% of the diameter of the kaneh. It's not doable. So when we say 2/3 versus 1/3, that's another way of saying rove. So don't get caught up in that. Okay, I know that's the first thing to get caught up in. Why 2/3? It doesn't say right. Why 2/3? It doesn't say rove, right? 2/3. But let's assume that 2/3 means rove. So would you say that this position is an accurate description of our machlokes in the Mishnah?
Yeah.
Yeah? No?
Yeah,
Maybe?
yeah.
Right?
seems pretty much. Seems pretty much, yeah.
Seems pretty much the way we've explained it, right?
Yeah.
Seems pretty much the way we've explained it. The Rabbanan Savre, because the rabbis hold, we're now at the last line of the gray bar. The Rabbanan Savre, the rabbis hold, Kula Shchita Ba'inan B'Taba'az Gedola. They require 3/3, meaning the entirety of the Shchita, to be inside the Taba'az Gedola. Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda Savar, and Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda holds Rubo Kikulo. Excuse me. Thank you. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Huda holds rubo kekulo, aval higrim shlish, aval higrim. Okay, stop. Okay, rubo kekulo. Okay, so that seems to be the machlokas. The machlokas is 2/3 through the tabas gedola, 1/3 out of the tabas gedola. Looking at that example, 2/3 through the tabas gedola, 1/3 out of the tabas gedola, the rabbis would look at such a shechita and say, no good. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda would look at such a shechita and say, good. Okay?
Yeah.
All right, good. So far, so good? Okay. What about, says the Gemara, is there another possible way to understand the machlokas? That seems to be the way to understand the machlokas. Is there another possible way to understand the machlokas of the Mishnah? So the Gemara says, let's look inside and see. Aval, however, in other words, Rav Huna Amar Rav Yossi says the machlokes is when you shechted 2/3 within the tabas gedola and you were magrim a shlish. That's where the Rabbanan and Rabbi Yossi disagree. Aval, but what about the following case? Aval higrim shlish v'shachat shnei shlish divrei hakol psula. What is this case talking about?
Where you didn't do rove first, but first you were magrim a third, and then after, so you started above the tabata gedola and went down, basically.
Right, so you started above the tabas gedola, you slanted down into the tabas gedola, and then you made the rest of
No,
the
but now
cut.
you've injured the animal before you shechted the animal, and that can't be good.
You've injured the animal before
Did your
you...
shechita.
Yeah,
Because the shechita is not
if
allowed
you
up
do
there.
rove, right? So if you do rove, and technically it's shefted the second you hit rove. But you're right. If you start,
But it's
If
not
you start in a location that's not permissible, then you've now cut the animal, it's now injured.
Okay, so what you're saying, you're saying that you're basically confirming this understanding of the Mishnah. In other words, yes, if you were to start, if your first third was outside, and then you slope downwards, and now you're in the Tabas Gedola, and you continue, it would seem that clearly the rabbis would not accept
The
that
reverse
because
would be okay.
right, clearly the rabbis would not accept that because the rabbis require everything to be in the Tabas Gedola. So clearly the rabbis would not accept that, but even Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda would not accept that. Right? Even Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda would not accept that.
Whether they do or not, I don't know, but they should.
No, but I'm saying the way we understand the Mishnah,
They sometimes accept things I don't agree
right?
with.
The way we understand the Mishnah right now, Mr. Reese, the way we understand the Mishnah right now, what would Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda say about Higrim Shlish and then 2/3 inside?
Awesome.
Everybody would say it's usher. Certainly the rabbis would say it's usher, but even Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda would say it's usher. Okay, so far that's the way we always thought the Mishnah was to be explained. That's the way I explained it to you at the beginning. That seems to make sense to all of us. Now,
Why should we leave it at that?
why should we?
Keep it
Why?
up, down, and up.
Right? Why should we leave it at that? Says the Gemara. Right? Says the Gemara. Why would this idea that a third down and then 2/3 across, why would even Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda not allow that? So says the Gemara, Dechi nafka chiyusa, because when the life goes out of the animal, in other words, that when the animal dies, ba'inan ruba b'shchita veleka. What do we require? We require rove of a shchita, and there was not. Okay? What is considered the point at which the animal dies?
Yeah, when you have the rove.
When you have rope.
When you've cut rove of the kaneh, that is considered halachically the point at which the animal dies. Now, if you have shechted rove or the entirety of the veshet before you touch the kana, so then clearly the animal's dead already,
And you have a lot of skill.
right?
Well, maybe for
So wait, say this
it's
again?
not so hard.
If you have shechted through the veshet before you touch the kana. Now, in a way, right, that's a little bit unusual. Why? Because the kana is certainly with us, certainly with people, the kana is
In front.
close, is right up front, and the veshet is behind the kana. The veshet is between the kana and the spine, if you will. That's where the veshet
That's
is.
with behemoths too.
Yeah.
There's only one or two birds, right? The pigeon
Yeah.
has
Pigeon.
No,
has the
Zach and I
side.
shechted a whole bunch of chickens.
Chickens
once.
where the
Remember that?
quota was here,
Yeah,
and the
this
breast
thing
was
was
here.
like- At least we're not the
I
healthy.
hope you just threw them out.
No.
Okay,
But
it-
actually, interestingly,
Non-Jewish pork.
so here's something interesting.
The foul.
So obviously, I only know this because of some research, but sometimes a farmer needs to force feed a calf. In other words, that the calf is, for whatever reason, not eating. Right? The calf is going to die if it doesn't eat. So the farmer has to force feed the calf. Literally, he has to take a tube, he has to put it in the mouth, and insert it down the veshet, because it's the veshet that goes to the stomachs, right? So you have to put it in the mouth and insert it into the veshet. If he puts it in the mouth and it goes into the kana instead, that's going to be a big problem. Right? It's going to be a big problem. Right, will definitely die. Right, goes into the veshet. Interestingly, with a calf, you can feel both the kana and the veshet at the front of the neck. As the animal gets larger, it seems the veshet moves more to the back. But when the animal is younger, both the kana and the veshet can be felt on the left side of the neck, right? And interestingly, because how can you tell the difference if you're feeling between the kana and the veshet,
It's harder.
It's hard.
right? One has rings, right? The kana has rings and is more cartilagish.
Right.
Cartilage.
We got it.
Has more cartilage.
Thank you. The veshet, on the other hand, is smooth and is harder. Well, maybe it's not so hard.
No,
The veshet is at least smooth. It's smooth. So the kana feels harder. The veshet feels smoother. So it is possible you can feel through a calf's neck, and you can literally feel which is the kana and which is the veshet. Not only that, but if you move the tube, you can feel where the tube is. You can feel if the tube is in the veshet or in the kana. You need to be able to do that before you start feeding this animal, because otherwise you're going to kill it. So it is possible.
Do you have notes on that, Lisa? Like video? Or?
It is. I'll send you the PDF. It is possible. It is possible to shecht through the veshet before you get to the kana. It's not usual, certainly on a bigger behemoth,
These chickens.
right? But in a calf,
Absolutely.
But in a
That's
calf,
really weird chickens.
right? In a calf,
Remember that spot?
you can do that. It is possible to do that, especially if instead of
If its
cutting
head is
directly from
turned
under the neck,
sideways.
if the animal's head is turned this way,
Yep.
you're hitting the veshet first, no matter what. You're hitting the veshet first. All right? Certainly with the calf. Maybe when the animal gets a little bit older, maybe not, but certainly with the calf. Okay. So obviously when the Gemara says kinafka chiyusa, when the life goes out of the animal, its rove of the kana has to be cut. That properly, that means assuming that the veshet has not already been cut. Okay, so now let's think about what happens. I define the moment of death for the animal when rove of the kana is cut. So now, according to this case of 1/3, 2/3, right? Which we said everybody seems to say is no good. Why is that? Because 1/3 and then 1/3 is already 50%. The animal's halachically dead. And if the animal is halachically dead at that point, there has not been rove of the kana cut in the proper makom hashchita. There's only been 1/3 of the kana cut in the proper makom hashchita. So it would seem to be that everybody, certainly the rabbis, but even Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda says, that's invalid. 1/3 and 2/3 is absolutely no good. 2/3 and 1/3, the rabbis would say is no good, but Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda would say is good. Okay? Now the Gemara is going to flip that on us, just to make it interesting. Says the Gemara now, Amar le Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda says, Adarabba, just the opposite. In other words, you're saying that 2/3 and 1/3, that's where the machlokes is, but 1/3 and 2/3, everybody agrees is no good. I'm going to tell you, punk faker, just the opposite. What do I mean by that? Lema mar ifcha. Machlokes, what's the machlokes between the rabbis and Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda? Machlokes kishehigrim shlish v'shachat shnei shlish. What's the machlokes? The machlokes is when I did 1/3, 2/3. That's where the rabbis and Rabbi Yehuda disagree. 1/3 and 2/3. The rabbis say, no good. Why? Because the rabbis require everything to be in the tabaz gedola. So the minute any piece of the shechita is outside of the tabaz gedola, no good. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, 1/3, 2/3 is good. How could that possibly be? How could Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda say 1/3, 2/3 is good? The Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda savar midi dahave achatzi kana pagum. I don't know if you've learned this before, all right? Maybe you learned it with the Simla Chadasha, I don't know. There's a case of something called chatzi kana pagum. What does that mean? It means that the animal had a cut in its neck. Its trachea was lacerated, okay? From something, not from shchita, not from a masa shchita. Its trachea was lacerated, and it was lacerated less than rov, but all in the makom shchita. Right? In other words, I don't know, got into a fight with another animal. The other animal took its,
Tried to shecht it.
right? The other animal tried to shecht
Is it
it.
the vesha that's a concern?
There's a million
Yeah.
concerns with that.
The vesha is the concern.
Yeah.
not the
No, but
kind.
just the wound is the concern.
No, but the Simcha
No,
Dasha
because
does talk about
according to the Simla, it's the vesha that is a concern
Right.
if it has a puncture, not the cunning.
Okay.
This
Don't
is
you
a
have
case.
an overall concern if the animal was wounded or anything like that?
Well, this is a case that the Gemara brings. I don't quite understand how an animal can live like this, but the Gemara seems to say that such an animal is not considered a treifa. That if there was a laceration that went through less than rov of the kaneh, not a shchita laceration, a laceration that comes from anything else, the animal is not a treifa.
I can
But if it was
understand
vesha,
but I can't
it would
understand
be.
it on a different.
A
I can
vesha-
understand that
vesha's
it is
a different
one
story.
particular thing we're talking about, but I can't understand it on a bigger.
I remember the Simcha Dasha.
It could happen with
Yeah.
bigger
Like
birds.
the bottom of the page, and it talks
What
about.
could happen with a bigger
if-
bird?
If the Vesha, it's a problem.
They could have
Vesha is probably-
a
They still have the
small
problem.
laceration and they could live.
With the small lacer.
Yeah, I guess
With
the,
a
it's like a
goose or
tracheotomy.
Tracheotomy.
It's like a minor
Tracheotomy,
trach.
yeah.
Okay, like a minor trach, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's basically a laceration is a puncture, it's a hainu hach, same thing, okay? So if there was a laceration, and the laceration went, let's say, 40% of the way through the kaneh, how could you eat that animal?
It's not rove.
What would you have to do?
Well, we wouldn't be able to tell not to, first of all.
What would you do?
Remove
You'd
that
shecht it,
section.
you'd at least shecht it in a different place.
According to the Gemara, you'd put your knife where the laceration is
And finish it.
and shecht
Above or below it or something?
12 more percent or 11 more
Finish the
percent.
job.
In other words, right? So what would you do? You would shecht rove. You would shecht a little. In other words, the lacerated part of the kana.
How is this not a shahiyah, man?
Yeah, that's, I mean,
Fair,
the whole thing makes no sense.
A shehiyah is
No,
a
shehiyah is
pause
a
in the
pause.
maaseh
It didn't
shchita.
pause, it already
There
had
was
a
no maaseh
laceration.
shchita here. There was a laceration. You are just
Well, are we
starting.
still counting that laceration as part of the majority?
No,
You
you're
are
not.
counting it if it's
You
only
are.
counting towards the total
You're not
percentage.
counting that last. That's this particular case, right? In this particular case, you are not counting the laceration as part of the maaseh shchita. Okay, you're not counting the laceration as part of the maaseh shchita. All you have to do is very carefully, while the animal lies there with its neck up like that, you just have to
still.
completely
Most
still.
likely because it's dead.
Right? You just have to take your knife and shecht a little bit more, right? Slice a little bit more through the kana, and you have a kosher shchita. You have a kosher shchita. That seems to be the halacha according to everyone. That seems to be the halacha according to everyone. The case is called Chatzi Kana Pagum. Now it's not Chatzi Kana Pagum, it's a little bit less than Chatzi Kana Pagum, right? It's not a half.
The
It's,
question is, how do you know it didn't get these perfect cuts
excuse me.
by someone else trying to shecht it,
Okay.
and then having the
Because
pause?
you're-
wait a second,
it's
Jonathan.
Perfectly open for you to obviously say
Jonathan,
that.
don't think about practicalities here.
I-
We're not
I have to stop
right.
that, I know.
Right. We're not concerned with practicalities.
It's sort of like the rock
Okay.
the animal cuts itself on.
We're not concerned with practicalities. We're concerned with the halachic principle here. All right? You're right. Practically speaking, this is not possible. Right? Practically speaking, it's not possible. But we're concerned with the halacha. And if you will, the halacha needs to be able to operate in this, in this practical consideration-free zone. In other words, don't get caught up in lamase as to how could this actually happen? What about injury? Let's just look at the principle. The principle is there's a laceration in the kana that goes through 48% of the kana. Right? You now come along and you take your shchita knife and you cut another 5%. Right? The Gemara seems to say that is considered a valid shchita. That is considered a valid shchita. Okay? It's called Chatzi Kana Pagum. It is considered a valid shchita. Okay, so let's stop for a second here. Is it a valid shchita according to whom?
You just said it according to everybody.
Okay, so how could it possibly be a valid shchita according to the Rabbanan?
Yeah.
Right? What did the Rabbanan say?
It all has to be in the
Mako.
The Rabbanan said it all has to be in the Tabas Gedola.
right.
Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda said, as long as Rov is in the Tabas Gedola, it's good. Does that mean that the Rabbanan don't hold by Rov?
No.
No, they're saying it has to be rolled. They're just saying it has to
cannot
be
move.
within the right location.
Are they saying, let's say you did the following. Let's say you shechted through Rov, and
If you
then
got rove
They're
of
saying
the
it has to be in
Tabak
rove
Gadola,
and
if you
stay
got
there.
rove of the Tabak Gadola, then
I
okay.
did Rov of the Tabas Gedola, and then I pulled my knife
Stay
out.
with it. Yeah.
I did Rov of, in other words, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda says you do Rov of the Tabas Gedola, and then you go up.
Right.
But what if you did Rov of the Tabas Gedola and pulled your knife out? What would the Rabbanan say?
Good.
Good.
Theoretically, the Rabbanan would say good, unless they have a reason to possibly say Rov doesn't work by Shchita, right? But in other words, we could make an argument that when the rabbis disagree with Rabbi Yehuda, they're not disagreeing about the principle of Rov. What they're disagreeing about is what happens after Rov. If nothing happens after Rov, the Rabbanan would say fine. But if you're magrim after Rov, the Rabbanan would say no good. Okay? Can you entertain that possibility?
Yeah.
Right? Can you hear that? Okay. So now we have this case of chatzi kana pagum. All right, chatzi kana pagum. So what happens? V'Rabbanan hasam. Right. What did the Rabbanan say? Hasam in the case of chatzi kana pagum, makom shchita. Right. Chatzi kana pagum. Where was the cut? It was in the makom shchita, correct? Chatzi kana pagum, the case is described as a laceration in the makom hashchita. So the rabbis would look at that and they would say, chatzi kana pagum is fine. Why? Because it's a laceration in the makom hashchita. Now you just have to finish it. What would they say about the 1/3, 2/3?
It's out of the.
They would seem to say, no good. Why? Because that 1/3 is out of, it's not the same as chatzi kana pagum. That 1/3 is out of the makom hashchita. What about Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda? What would he say? So the rabbis would say, hasam makom shchita. Hasam, the case of the chatzi kana pagum is makom shchita. Hacha, but here in our case of 1/3, 2/3, lav makom shchita. Sorry. Aval, but shachat shnei shlish v'higrim shlish divrei hakol kshera. Right. So there, if we understood the machlokes between Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda this way, the rabbis would agree. Because what's the machlokes about? The machlokes is about 1/3, 2/3. 1/3, 2/3, the rabbis say, no good.
No good.
Why? Because the 1/3 is not in the makom shchita. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda would say, 1/3, 2/3 is good. Why? Because rove of the cut was in the makom shchita. Rove of the cut was in the makom shchita. Even though it didn't start there. But both Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda would agree, 2/3, 1/3, everybody would say it's kosher. Okay?
In this alternative reading.
In this alternative reading. Okay, so what we've done tonight is we've given the...
Confuse the hell out of you.
Confuse the hell out of you. Yes. What we've done tonight is we've given the reading that we always assumed belonged to the Mishnah, and then we grappled with this alternative universe in which everything is switched around. The rabbis and Rabbi Yehuda now agree to something that they both disagreed with in the pshat meaning. Okay, we'll stop here for tonight. I'll try and draw it out, for you for next week to see if that helps a little bit.